The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. Every time I hear this bumper, for some reason I feel like having a cup of coffee. What is it? Was that bumper ever used in a coffee commercial, Craig? No, but you also feel like coffee. Maybe it's that sound it makes like it's coming from a percolator. Remember those old things, X-Zone Nation? Mom and Dad would make coffee on a Saturday or Sunday morning when they didn't work, and you could smell it and you hear that bop, 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 bop. Yeah. Congratulations to Kevin Randall on his first show here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Kevin, you did a great job. Jerome Clark, very well known. In fact, I have his books right here in our studio. We use them as reference guides all the time. So there you go. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. You can always send an email to studio@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our website, xzoneradio.com. We have a new X-Zone Radio TV Facebook group page. It's very simple. Facebook.com/groups/X-Zone Radio TV. My guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, is Gene Slatter. And imagine your life as the most fascinating and fantastic treasure hunt possible, where you are the prize. Now, Jean has been shown by her higher guidance just how wonderful life can be if you embark on the treasure hunt where your life and soul meet. She now encourages everyone to gain the skills to access their own higher guidance and begin the treasure hunt. Jean's programs and materials teach down-to-earth, easy techniques for receiving rock-solid intuition that can be trusted for the quickest, most accurate, and relevant insights concerning life's treasure hunt journey. Joining me now from the beautiful state of California is Gene Slatter. And Gene, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, we're happy you're with us, Gene. Tell us about yourself and what was it that happened in the life of Gene Slatter that put her onto the path of helping so many people, get in touch with themselves and do the great work that you do.
Well, I'll tell you what, about 20 years ago, I was working one-on-one with clients in my traditional naturopathic business. Mm-hmm. And I had a client that came in and I did a technique called an allergy clearing on this client. And this, I had a way of talking to the body that a lot of naturopathic practitioners use. They would either do muscle testing or some sort of dowsing. I used a pendulum to find out what the body wanted. And in asking my client's body what it wanted to do, it said I wanted to clear 5 neurotransmitters. Now, I was trained to work and wanted to work just on the physical level, with herbs and with nutrition. I did not want to deal with anything that was spiritual. That was a little bit too woo-woo for me. And so here I am working with a client, and I'm doing a technique called an allergy clearing. I'm asking the body what it wants to clear. It says it wants to clear 5 neurotransmitters. which are chemicals in the brain, like norepinephrine and serotonin and dopamine. Well, I came up with 4 of the neurotransmitters, but could not think of what the 5th one might be. And yet, every time I ask the client's body, can I go ahead and do this clearing without knowing what this 5th one is? I got the answer back, no, you've got to name the 5th one. And at that point, I said to my client, we need to reschedule. I need time to study, find out what this 5th neurotransmitter might be. And then the very next words out of my client's mouth, who was a layperson, she said, well, is histamine a neurotransmitter? And I said, no. Histamine is not a neurotransmitter. It's that stuff your sinuses produce when you have an allergic reaction. That's why you take an antihistamine, but it's not a neurotransmitter. And then in the very next moment, I turned around and I pulled a book off my shelf that I had purchased 1 year prior, but had never opened. And the book falls open to a page where histamine is in the title. And so that in and of itself was quite a coincidence. And I laughed and I said to my client, well, look at this, it's talking about histamine. And then at the very next nanosecond, it's as if something took my eyeballs to a line buried in a paragraph. It's the only line words I saw on the whole page. And it said, histamine is also thought to be a neurotransmitter. Rob, that was my moment when I went from being very skeptical that there was something else beyond this physical expression into, frankly, I was just kind of freaked out. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. To me, that whole experience was so far beyond coincidence. When I told my client we had to reschedule, something made her say, is histamine a neurotransmitter? And when I said, no, it's not, what made me turn around and pull a book off my shelf that I'd never opened, open it to the page and to that line. That was my pivotal moment when I had this awareness that there's something beyond this physical. And at that time, it was a little bit unnerving to me. So I finished my session with my client, couldn't wait to get her out the door because I had to sit there and think about that and just try to come up with some sort of explanation of what just happened. So that was my pivotal moment that changed my life. And I'm now a spiritual teacher. How life has changed. And but that was the moment that started it 20 years ago.
How has your life changed since that pivotal moment?
Well, let me tell you, it certainly was in baby steps because at that moment I was trying to understand what had happened. And the thought occurred to me that maybe, just maybe, I had help from an unseen dimension with my clients. And in my mind, I imagined a spiritual physician working with me that had inside information. And so I decided to call upon this spiritual physician when I would work with my clients. And as I would drive to my office, I would talk to my spiritual physician like I was talking to a staff member in front of me. And I said, look, we've got so-and-so coming in today. They've got issues with blood sugar. You got to help me out here. And you've got another client coming in who has issues with heart conditions. You got to help me out with that. And I started receiving information for my clients that it was clear I couldn't be privy to. Someone would come in that would have heart issues and the words would just come out of my mouth that, this has to do with your relationship with your husband. Or I would work with another client and an herb would come up that I really had never worked with before, but it would turn out to be the exact herb that client needed. And so this was working so well that I thought, well, if I got a spiritual physician helping me with my clients, clearly, maybe there's something else out there that would like to assist me with my business and help make me more successful. I need a spiritual financial consultant. I need a spiritual time manager. I need a spiritual marketer. I need a spiritual time manager. I wanted and receptionist. I imagined hiring all of those positions on the spiritual level and brought them in and had staff meetings in my car as I would go to work, talking out loud to this imaginary staff. And this worked so well for me, Rob. I'll just cut to the chase, and I could tell you many, many, many examples, but I'll cut to the chase. For the next 10 years, my husband was able to stay home with our 4 children while I supported the family, working part-time, and never had to hire anyone on the physical level because every position I needed was filled on the spiritual level. And that led to writing my book, Hiring the Heavens.
So how do you explain how this works? Like I would love to get more staff. In all seriousness, how do you believe the mechanics of this works when you talk about hiring the heavens?
Well, I believe now, because I went way beyond business and I began to hire a way for everything in my life. This whole idea that the spiritual realm, God, angels, whatever term you want to put to it, this whole idea of that something beyond, the way that I was brought up in a fundamentalist Christian religion was that was separate from me. And that it was at arm's length, and you could pray. Certainly people, all religions pray, but in my mind, it had to be a worthy prayer. It had to be a big ticket item. It had to be something that, was deserving of being listened to. You couldn't ask the big guy to help you find the perfect hair color. But with this idea, I could do that. I could hire a spiritual hairdresser to help me go to the local drugstore and find the perfect hair color. And that's what I started doing. I hired a way for everything in my life. When I would go on a trip, I would hire a spiritual mechanic to make sure that the car was running smoothly. I'd hire a spiritual connoisseur to help us find the best restaurants. I'd hire a spiritual tour guide to help us find the best places to stop along the way. I hired a spiritual attitude adjuster to help keep my kids happy in the car. Anything that I was doing, I hired away from the heavens. And the way that I believe that this works, Rob, is that I simply ask people to imagine that the spiritual world is everybody's complex as our own physical world. And that there's a match for every skill, talent, every personality trait that you could possibly imagine. And that it's all available to us if we simply ask. And this idea that somehow it's separate from us and at arm's length, what if that was never the intention? What if we have full access to all of these talents and skills and abilities, and they're there for us to quote unquote hire, and that they never wanted to be separate from our life? Instead, they delight in being included in everything that we do. So that's my premise. And when you do that, Rob, some extraordinary things can happen, and things that will boggle your mind and put you into this where you just can't explain it other than to say it's a flat out miracle.
Can anyone do this?
Anyone can do this. And that's what's fun about it. It's something, how many techniques do you know of that can truly change your life that require absolutely no practice, require absolutely no skill on your part? You already know how to do it, and you have immediate access. And how many techniques do you know of that can fit that criteria? Well, this one does. Everybody can do this, and even people that are skeptical. And I've had stories that, everything's anecdotal, of course, and certainly I have my own stories that are just, to me, jaw-dropping, but there's um, even people that have been skeptical have written in and told me some of the things that have happened for them. So it isn't based on belief. It isn't, someone would say, well, don't you have to believe in this in order to make it work? And my answer is no. And there is a reason for that, and I would love to get into that maybe a little bit later. I'd love to tell you some stories of things that can happen when you hire from the heavens.
Well, since I do the hiring and the firing here, I would love to hear some of these stories. Could you share a few with us right now?
Well, I'm going to start with one of my favorite stories, and this really, as I tell you what has happened with this particular story in my book, it really will open your eyes to the fact that miracles can happen, and what if we can actually command them? That's the interesting thing to play with here. Well, the story in my book is of a spiritual jewelry sleuth, and it came about when I was telling a girlfriend about this, how I was working with my committees. I called them my committee because I didn't want to use any kind of religious wording like angels. That was just too heavily weighted for me. So I just used my committees, my spiritual committees, and I would tell her about all the amazing things that were happening for me. So she came back 2 days later to tell me what happened for her. And she had been out in a huge yard doing pruning for over an hour. And when she came in and was taking a drink of water, her daughter noticed that an irregular shaped pearl in a ring that her husband had given her many years ago was missing. So her heart sank. She knew that there was no way she was going to find this tiny little pearl in this huge yard where she had been working. And then she remembered what I had told her. So she imagined hiring a spiritual jewelry sleuth and asked, would you bring me my pearl, find my pearl and bring it to me? An hour later, she is sitting on the bed talking with her kids, and the dog jumped up on the bed. Her son said, Mom, Callie's playing with something in her mouth. And she said, drop it, Callie. And the dog dropped the pearl right in front of her hand. Now, the phone number, this spiritual phone number of the jewelry sleuth has gotten out. She's the best in the universe. And what I have heard since then is just even more jaw-dropping. One such lady who was a client of mine came to a presentation I was doing on hiring the heavens and heard this story of the spiritual jewelry sleuth. So on the way home, she hired that same spiritual jewelry sleuth and asked if she could find her wedding band. Now, she was a widow, her husband had passed away 10 years prior, and she had been missing her wedding band all of those 10 years. When she got home, she sat down on the couch and put her feet up on the coffee table. Now, on the coffee table is a live plant that had only been there for a couple years. She noticed that there was a dead leaf on the plant. She reached over to pull the dead leaf off and saw something shiny in the soil and pulled up her wedding band. One more story, Rob.
Wow. Wow.
One more story
Sure.
about jewelry, and this is on from an Amazon review. This lady wrote in and she said, oh my gosh, I would have never believed it if it hadn't happened just exactly as you said it would. She said that her mother had passed away 3 years prior, and what had been promised to her was her mother's opal ring. But after her mother passed away, they went through her entire home and could never find that ring. So she figured she would never have her mother's ring. Well, after she read the book, she decided to hire the spiritual jewelry sleuth. asked, would you find my mother's opal ring and bring it back to me? Just shortly after that, she is doing her laundry and mating socks. One of the socks has a knot in it, and she's feeling something, that there's something in the sock. She unties the knot, and inside is her mother's opal ring.
This is freaky.
Well, see, here's the thing, Rob. You know, when we talk about the spiritual dimension, do we really think that they're limited by time and space like we are?
Of course not.
Yeah. And so it's freaky for us because we couldn't imagine something like that happening in, you know, abiding by the physical laws. But we're working with a realm that doesn't have to deal with that. And so we can move into this realm where miracles really can happen. And to me, those are miracles because they're so far. I mean, you can't even explain it as a coincidence. But this is what happens when you can access this other dimension.
And anyone can do this.
Anyone can do this. And Rob, it just the things like I'll tell you what happened for me for writing my book, Hiring the Heavens. Sure. I was having so much fun with this idea. Everything from interior decorating, finding the perfect furniture, finding the perfect paint. Yes. We were doing a remodel on our home. Everything just was flowing for me. If I, no matter what it was that I needed, I hired a specialist first. And then things would just be, you know, fall into place on the physical level.
You and I have to take a break, a short break. All right. We're going to be back, and, you know, I'm scratching my head saying, why haven't we heard about this before? I'm going to do some hiring. And Jean Slatter is our special guest, Exo Nation. Her website. All right, do you have your pencils and paper up? Okay. The website is creativemystic.com. That's creativemystic.com. And Jean and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Whatever you do, do not go away.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. Celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses a quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Wilda Wieka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Wilda Wieka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at www.drgibbswilliams.com.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and yes, I know I'm getting lambasted with emails left, right, and center because I haven't completed the astrology for this week. Jeez, I'm going to have to get myself a spirit to do this, and I know the lady who's going to help me do the hiring. All right, let me see here, X-Zone Nation. We stopped at Cancer last time, so let's go. Leo, July 23 to August 23. You may need to further your knowledge and experience and encourage others to follow your lead. You know what you can... What does this say, Craig? Let me see. You know what you can do to make yourself feel good. Your lucky numbers are 1, 11, 14, 21, 27, and 38. Let me see. Virgo, August 24 to September 23. You might be able to keep your equilibrium while others around you are getting confused. You may need to be vocalized, and your creative interpretation of the situation will be seen. Your lucky numbers are 6, 14, 16, 23, 46, 48. And for Libra, for September 24 to October 23, former colleagues may help you open some doors. You may want to keep in touch with them and could feel lucky to be part of a caring team. Lucky numbers are 18, 21, 25, 32, 33, 47. And there's a little nun in that church somewhere downtown Hamilton yelling bingo again. Sorry, sister. Not a bingo. And finally, for this segment, let me see here. All right. Scorpio, October 24 to November 22. If you research your ideas, you could well be accepted. You may need to take a stronger view on a situation that may make up and make you feel a little uncomfortable. Lucky numbers are 3, 24, 28, 37, 46, and 49. For the other four charts, you'll have to listen in tomorrow night at 11 o'clock. Right here on the X-Zone. Jean Slater is our special guest, and we're talking to Jean about hiring the heavens. Her website is creativemystic.com. All right, I am really interested in this. This sounds too good to be true, Jean.
And I just invite you to play with it and see what happens. What do you got to lose, right? You know, I was just starting to say that when after I had been playing with this and talking to my friends and so excited about it, I got the message, okay, now it's time for you to write a book about it. And I says, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to do. So the first thing I did was I put together a spiritual book writing committee.
Okay.
I said, bring me somebody that can help me develop these ideas, because it's such a simple concept. Truly, I can explain it in 15 minutes. So this is going to be a very short book if I don't have somebody helping me to develop these ideas and to bring a book to life. Well, the very next day, I get a message on my recorder from a complete stranger. And she says, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a developmental editor, and I was just wondering if you had any book projects you were working on.
Wow.
So what I'm saying is if you hire from the heavens first,
Mm-hmm.
they can bring to your doorstep the exact physical embodiment of the person that you need, that will be the best in the universe for you. And this happened again after my developmental editor was so amazing, and we got this book created, and I think it's a fabulous book, extremely well written. But it got to the point where the manuscript was complete, and now I needed somebody to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed. So I asked my spiritual book writing committee, okay, now bring me somebody that can do that for me. The very next day, I had a brand new client in my office who had very tiny handwriting, which to me means that they're very detail-oriented. I asked her, what is it that you do? She says, well, I'm a copy editor. And I says, what's a copy editor? She says, well, we go through manuscripts and we make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. I laughed and I says, well, you're supposed to work for me. And that's how I got my book written. But it didn't stop there, Rob. Then, once the book was written and complete, it was getting it published. Now, unbeknownst to me, it's a very difficult thing in the book writing world to get a book published, a first-time author.
In most cases, we'll add here, because I have a feeling your hired people from heaven gave you a hand.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And I didn't know you were supposed to write a book proposal, get your press kit done, get your marketing plan done, and submit to about 30 different publishers. I didn't know any of this. So I just asked my spiritual book writing committee, okay, you want this published? Who do you want it published with? And they told me New World Library. And they are the publishers of The Power of Now. I looked them up. I said, okay, this looks like a good place. I sent them my book with a little letter that said, you guys are the ones. And they published it.
They're a great group of people.
Good. You're familiar with them.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I've had the pleasure of having several authors on the show through those people over the 25 years that this show has been on air.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, if you know, without getting into too much detail, how would one go about contacting what do we classify these workers as? The people we're hiring from the heavens. Do we call them spirits? Do we call them entities? Do we call them energy? Do we call them angels?
You know, I've settled on the word angels, but that is something that I was very uncomfortable with.
Why?
At first, because I left religion behind many, many years ago, kind of just swore off anything to do with religion. And so angels had this connotation of religion. So I was very uncomfortable with using that term.
Okay.
So instead, I gave them names of who I would hire here on the physical level. If I needed help with the addition that we were doing, I hired a spiritual architect or a spiritual contractor or a spiritual carpenter. And those were the terms that I used and that I was comfortable with. And Ram, you're asking me to tell you who these beings are, and I will tell you I don't know, and further, I don't think it matters. And you might even ask me, well, how does this work?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I know for sure. I just am inviting you to give it a try and see what happens and come up with your own conclusions.
But as the employer who's doing the hiring of the heavens, I'd like to know who I am dealing with as an employer. Is there any way, have you ever tried to find out who they are, where they come from, and what their intent is?
Well, I did, and here's what happened. One day I sat down at a lunch. I took with me some 3x5 cards because I did want to get an answer to this. And I was in the process of writing my book, and I really needed to maybe diagram this about how this is working. So I took some 3x5 cards with me to a lunch. I sat out in, it was a place where I could sit in the back, out on a deck, and be kind of private. And I began with diagramming the old paradigm that I grew up with, where we feel like we are the human here and praying to something outside of ourselves. And it's a one-way communication where we're sending up a prayer, if you will, and there is this being that is choosing among only the most deserving of prayers. And I knew that's not what I was experiencing, but I wanted to get that piece down. So then I took that 3x5 card and I set it aside and I started drawing what I thought might be going on. And for me, it was I drew the picture of God on top in a circle and the self below in a circle. And in between, I put intercessors. And I called that perhaps those are your angels and guides and spirit.
Yeah.
And they're somehow in between and acting as intercessors. And I asked, is this what's happening? And the answer I got back was, you're not even close.
How did that make you feel when you got the kind of answer from your spiritual team that you're not even close?
It made me feel like I got to keep digging. I got to understand this.
Right.
So the next picture I drew was of the self maybe having more authority. And so I put the self in the circle where I had put angels and guides. And I asked, okay, am I getting, is this it? And said, nope, still don't have it. And I kept working the self up higher and higher in authority by moving that circle up higher. And still, where it got to the point where it was God above and the self right below it and even above the angels and guides. And I thought, this has got to be it. And still said, no, that's not it either. So there was only one thing left to do.
Okay, go out and get a shot of Jack Daniels and contemplate life.
I didn't think of that one.
Well.
But in my mind, there was only one thing left to do. And that was, I took my pencil and I crossed off God up on the top and I put God down below.
Ooh, case. Very good.
Down below. And I asked, okay, is that it? And I got yes. Now, Rob, my upbringing, that was blasphemy.
Mine too.
The self was above God. Okay, so that was blasphemy. And I just remember pushing myself away from the table. And again, this was for my book. I said out loud, you can't ask me to say that because it went too far. Well, I said, if you're gonna have to explain, what does this picture mean? And the message was given that it's the same as when we are children, when you're 2 years old, you're looking to your parents for all of your answers, right? And that's the way it should be. Nobody questions that. And that's the way it is when you're 5 and you're growing up and you're 10. But this idea that your parents have all the answers for you doesn't work when you're 19.
It doesn't work when you're 40. It doesn't work when you're 50. I don't think
and it
any,
shouldn't be working. I mean,
that's right.
Can you imagine being in that paradigm when you're 40 years old and you're still looking to your parents for all your answers?
Well, it's called being a mama's boy.
Yeah. Well, they said it's the same thing. That it's time for us to grow up spiritually. That if we're still looking to God for all of our answers and not growing up spiritually, that we have to move beyond that old paradigm.
Yeah. You know, I've said many times on the show that I believe that we have outgrown religion as we know it. We have to evolve, and this is why there are so many problems with the established religious philosophies today. They're stagnant because they're not going with the flow. Like, we're not sheep anymore. We don't need a shepherd because we are the shepherd now. We have to
That is exactly what this picture was saying.
Wow.
And then the miracle. Here's another miracle story here.
I love miracle stories.
So I'm working with my developmental editor, and and I explained to her and showed her my 3x5 cards of what I had drawn, and she was trying to depict this in Microsoft Word and was struggling with it. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, and she's trying to draw these circles, and she's trying to get God to go down in the circle below the self, and it just wouldn't go. And she couldn't figure out how to make it happen. And I stood behind her. I says, "What's going on?" She says, "I just can't get God to go down here." And then poof, the perfect drawing appeared. Now, Rob, we don't know how it happened. It just appeared. And what if you can picture this with this, picture the self, or the word self, as a circle around it. What happened was the word God enlarged and went to the background, and the O for the self was the O in God, in perfect alignment. And so that's the picture that really says it all. Now,
when you said perfect alignment, what I had an impression in my mind that what you're discussing could also be interpreted or visualized as a planetary alignment, and if you're looking from planet Earth, it could be a lunar eclipse when the sun, let's try this again. The sun, the earth, and the moon are in a direct line causing the eclipse.
That's what it was like. The O that used to be God was replaced with the O that had the self in it. And that was the epiphany, that we are an integral part of God and that God is experiencing through us. Now, the other part of that picture was still all of the angels, the guides, and the spirit. Well, guess what? If you're that God energy, does it now make sense why all of the spiritual realm is there to assist you in the creation of your world? Does it now make sense why we can call upon them and they're there for us?
But doesn't it also make sense that if we take a look at the Bible, where in Genesis it says, "And God said, let us create man in our image, in our likeness." And if that is true, we ourselves are gods. We have the God power within us. And that's why I think when you're talking about the circle being below, it should, this is why the circle encompasses the center, because we are all one.
Yes. That is what I believe now. Yeah. It was shocking to me when it was revealed, because I had to learn all this myself. It's like if I had read a book about that, that would have been philosophical and interesting information. But the way that it came about for me, and to have it being delivered to me through me, that's how it truly took hold, and I got it. And I do believe that now.
I believe that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yes.
Yeah. This is amazing. I've had people on the show talking about the secret of the power of intent, karma. But this is the first time in the years I've been doing the show where it's being talked to and taught on a one-to-one basis, even though there's hundreds of thousands of people listening to us right now.
Well, here's the wonderful thing. I asked too, does this work by the law of attraction? Because I thought maybe that's how all these amazing things were happening. And the answer I got back was no, it does not work by the law of attraction.
And
pardon me?
And I can see where you're coming from, and I agree with that. That, in my opinion, the law of attraction, or karma, or whatever you want to put it, is that no matter how much you hope, you desire, you may wish upon a falling star. Nothing will happen unless you put it into effect. Like, wishing and hoping isn't going to get anything done, but coming up with the idea, actually working towards the goal happening, whether you have spiritual assistance or not, the result will be the same: success.
Well,
and what I'm saying in very short is I agree with what you're saying, and I can see it and I can understand it.
The downfall of the law of attraction is that it all comes back on you as if things aren't happening the way that you want them, in some way it's your fault. In some way you attracted that. And the books about the law of attraction say that no matter what's going on in your life, you attracted that. There's no preference from the universe. So when things aren't occurring the way that you want them to, you have to go back to, okay, there's all the rules. Did I not state it in the present tense? Did I not put enough emotion behind it? Maybe I got to clear my mother issues.
Oh, come on. This is way too much.
Maybe I got to do this. Maybe I got to do that. And there's all these rules about working with the law of attraction.
Exactly.
And what my guidance told me is that's not how this works, because the beauty of this is you don't have to earn it. This is a gift that's given to you simply because of who you are, simply because you exist, simply because you are that God energy. There's nothing you can do to earn it, and there's nothing you could ever do to have it taken away from you. It's yours because you exist. Just like you breathe the air, you don't have to think to yourself, Rob, okay, I have to be thinking positive thoughts to take in this next breath of air. You don't think that way. You exist, therefore you get to breathe. And that's what my guidance says this is. This is a gift of grace. It's yours, period. There's nothing you have to do to earn it. There's no amount of prayer you have to do, no amount of meditation, no amount of spinning around 3 times and facing the sun and stating things in positive tense. And there's nothing. All you have to do is just ask. It's yours already. It's yours already.
We've got about a minute and a half left. Could you give us an example within that time on how someone would use these spirits, or call these spirits, summon these spirits, or start hiring the heavens like you do?
Start playing with it. You already know how to ask for things, so just begin playing with it. Put it to use immediately. Whatever it is that you're doing on the physical plane, hire that expert on the spiritual level first, and then just see what happens. Start playing with this, and what happens in the background is very subtly.
Jean, I hate to do this, dear.
I
hate to do this, but we have just run out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Jean, do me a favor. Come back again soon.
I will. Thank you.
We have so much more to talk about. Thank you very much. And please thank all your employees from Heavens and tell them they're going to be getting a call from a guy in Hamilton, Ontario in the near future. Jean, take care of yourself. Great talking to you, and continued success and blessings to you and yours.
Thank you.
All right, Exo Nation, that's it for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night at 11 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the Exo. So until tomorrow night, from everyone here to everyone out there, good night, God bless, and take care.